dear sponsors, dear Ashok, my good friend, fellow ambassadors and speakers, dear participant, thank you for attending this session on MDG2. It's a great pleasure for me to be here, and I would like to thank all the people that made it possible. The organization has been great so far. When I look at the lineup of speakers for this session, I was worried that actually Ashok will speak before me, because he always gives so brilliant presentation. Today I'm most worried because on every slide where he was showing the progress of the Millennium Development Goals, Burkina Faso, the country where I come from, was in red. So thank you, Ashok, for embarrassing me more. So I would like to know if you know something about Burkina Faso. What's the name of the capital of Burkina Faso? Anyone know? Yes? Not you, Ashok. No. Yes? Yes? What? Ouagadougou. Okay. So I will... Okay. Right. I'll start the presentation about giving an introduction to Burkina Faso and the project that we are implementing in this area. Burkina Faso is in West Africa. As already mentioned, the challenging last mile to achieving education for all, agriculture, our main activity, health and nutrition, the energy factor, which is something we are trying to address, strategies for the future, the energies for the future, and the initiatives we have called the Light of Knowledge Initiative. Huh? Okay. All right. So Burkina Faso is located in sub-Saharan Africa, and right in the middle, surrounded by countries who you probably know better than Burkina Faso. We'll have a look at the state of primary education in Burkina Faso. I noticed that a lot of my fellow speakers have not said very much about primary education, which is good. Our food project and our energy project. Okay. First, sub-Saharan Africa has about 900 million people with an average population growth of 2.5%. Child malnutrition, over 20%. Urban population of only 36%, which will explain why I will focus on the rural area, because in sub-Saharan Africa, most people live in the rural areas. The literacy rates are globally, of people over 15 are globally over 53%. Globally, the primary school enrollment is 90%. GDP of 3.1 billion in 1991 and 10.4 billion now. So this raises a certain number of questions. With the most number of fastest growing economies, fastest growing trades in the world, sub-Saharan Africa is said to be the area where we will not meet MDG2 in 2015. Okay. This raises a certain number of questions on where this wealth is going and why are we looking at all the opportunities but the opportunity to educate our kids. Burkina Faso itself has only 17 million people. So relative to the size of the country, is not very populated. Higher population growth, linking back to what Ashok says about natality. The urban population is only 27%, so we have literally 85% of our fellow citizens living in rural areas. Population and the poverty line is 50%, literally. Child malnutrition, over a quarter of the children. Literacy rate, 29%. Primary school enrollment, 79%. 82% of males and 72% of female. This is how it's split. Now, I will go on to give you some information about what we are doing in Burkina Faso. Our project is a climate-smart agriculture project. We are developing plantations in clusters, which means that we are bringing individual farmers together in certain areas to bring them technologies and grow the crops in a better way. We are bringing agro-resource processing capability into rural areas, and we are producing the energy which is required for agriculture and processing. We are doing commodity trading. This is the structure of the company based out of Singapore and the subsidiaries. So we work to produce food for people by helping them with seed collection, education. Actually, it's very difficult today to implement a project in West Africa, especially in Burkina Faso, without providing some level of education or training, fertigation, which is irrigation and fertilization together, storage, and outgrowers program. We use a lot of renewable energy because the country has no other energy, as most of the surrounding countries. So solar energy, which is plenty, biomass, biodiesel, and fuel-efficient stoves for water pumps. So I will now get into some of the difficult numbers that will maybe shed a light on the issues leading to this situation of no more progress on MDG 2 in Burkina Faso and the West African region. During the past 10 years, we have seen significant progress, especially in enrollment. But in the recent years, progress has been very limited, and like Ashok is saying, progress is even regressing in some of the areas. As actors of rural development, we actually are witnessing a certain number of challenges that I would like to share with you. Some of these challenges are linked to the other Millennium Development Goals, but this pyramid here is very revealing of one of the fundamental problems, despite poverty, access to school, nutrition, tradition, the curriculum offered in primary school, which have probably not changed for many years, the problem of using national languages versus traditional languages for early learning, the training of teachers, the education material, and the alternative training. When I speak about alternative training, I mean the training for all the children who are dropping out of primary school or who have never attended primary schools. This pyramid basically shows that as people are older, they are less educated, which creates a certain number of challenges for the support of children in school and is one of the main reasons of children dropping out of primary school. Now, the goal for Burkina Faso was to reach 70% of completion by 2015. If we could only reduce the number of children dropping out of school, we would be able to reach these goals already now. So the number of rural poor is extremely high, and you can see that poverty is a big challenge. And all of this is linking into adult literacy. So these two factors combined are creating the situation that we are witnessing today, which is limited progress or no progress in terms of achieving MDG 2, primary education for all. We also have, with the geography of the country, insufficient number of school and teachers. Of course, lack of public transportation. There is literally no transportation available for children to have access to school. And in school we have issues of malnourishment, lack of proteins, and vegetable diet, which affect the capacity of the children to learn. And in most of these rural schools, there are no cantinas available to provide food for the children. Now, traditions are always also a factor in actually it's one of the causes that we have also witnessing in the rural areas, which are limiting progress in achieving MDG 2 and increasing the number of children in school. Child labor, early marriages, lack of support by the adults during their school curriculums, the perception of women literacy in rural areas, limited numbers of alternative centers. This is to address the problems of children dropping out of primary schools, as well as inadequate training of the trainers and equipment for this alternative training school. So in this alternative training school, they actually are learning jobs, so agriculture, and other technical jobs. Right. Now, one of the things which is obvious is that the teachings have to take into account the local conditions. So curriculums must be adapted. In areas where people are growing vegetables, where people are growing crops, this learning has to be integrated somehow into the school program in order to give a higher acceptance of this program in the specific areas. The same goes for areas living from fishing and other activities. There is a limited integration of technologies. Africa is becoming the second most connected continent. We are going to reach very soon one mobile phone per person, but yet all this technology has no effect on education. So when it comes to learning, it was proven that using the maternal language during the early years and introducing the national language progressively is making a very big difference in the capacity of the children to assimilate the other subjects such as mathematics and sciences and all. Up to now, the introduction of the maternal language during the first 2 years is still almost non-existent. Now, with very limited resources, we're facing challenges with the training of teachers, as well as the funding of primary education. Now, agriculture has a particular interest in Burkina because agriculture occupies 80% of people in Burkina. Therefore, we have to question why we are not able to provide sufficient nutrition to the children. Nutrition is necessary for the proper development of children, and yet remains a challenge because most of the children do not have access to a proper meal per day as defined by the Food Organization. So we have suggested that schools develop gardens to be able to provide for the nutritional need of the children, and that at least one meal per day is provided when they are in school. Now, it also linked into the education of mothers because they are not aware of the nutritional needs of the children either. So it is important that they are educated on the needs for the children to be able to assimilate their classes. Agriculture can have a positive effect as growing food, growing the proper proteins, beans, vegetables, but it also has an adverse effect. And this comes back to the questions of why, with so much growth, so many opportunities, we do not see progress in some of the Millennium Development Goals. As big companies are coming into West Africa to develop agro projects, what we see is actually more trafficking of children into these plantations. Also, we see the work in the family farm increasing. So you have some data about how many hours children are working out of school for household chores, as well as the different sectors which occupies the children out of school 7 to 14 years old, agriculture representing 70%. Now, some other factors affect community with special lifestyles, mostly nomadic communities and fishing communities. And all these situations are not taken into account into addressing the problems of education for all, primary education for all. The next factor which I will be addressing is the energy factor. The energy factor has been the single most important factor to the delivery of the MDG services, whether it is health, whether it is education, whether it is sanitation. Rural areas in West Africa have limited or no energy. But we are trying also to solve the problems of unemployment in Europe by inviting our European friend to help us with solving the energy problems. So, because the population is relatively small and it is very difficult to create grids to be able to provide energy into all the areas. Grids becomes very expensive, and the production of energy is also very expensive when it is decentralized, which means that you're running a generator for a village. It's a lot more expensive than having a grid that provides electricity from a big power plant. So, as a consequence, Burkina Faso has one of the most expensive energy in the world. The cost of the kilowatt in the cities is one of the highest, and I will not even comment the cost of the kilowatt produced into rural area using small generators. No energy means that it's not possible to deliver water services, so no clean water, which means that people have to go and get water from wells, which are very often contaminated. Health services, impossible to deliver. Education and technology, despite the fact that we have a lot of connectivity, a lot of mobile phone, a lot of technology, a lot of tablets, it's very difficult to use them in these rural areas. Information services, which could be one of the solutions to expanding knowledge, pushing knowledge, and of course, food production is affected, and we estimate that 60% of the food produced is wasted due to the fact that there's no energy. The same goes for food processing, and of course, the food that is not processed is lost. Energy is also responsible for a lot of the environmental degradation. Since there's no energy, most people use wood for cooking. But we are into an area that is right below the Sahara, very limited wood resources, which means that it is enhancing deforestation and accelerating deforestation, creating carbon emissions, generating more hardship and labor for children who have to go and collect the wood or get the water, as well as creates other hazards, which Ashok has already mentioned, in terms of creating fire in the house or creating toxic fumes. Now, we have not given up on being able to reach MDG 2 in our areas. And we are actually quite confident that if we are able to include in the dialogue the private sector, which is actually responsible for the growth and has the opportunity to support primary education, secondary education, and education in general, significant progress can be made. If we are able to make our leaders understand the link between sustainable growth, not only growth, because now we only have growth, but with the challenges in education, it will not be sustainable growth. So if we want to maintain sustainable growth, we have to be able to make the leader understand that education is key, and therefore the children should be protected from child labor, as well as the investors coming mostly from abroad. We have to promote adult literacy. I think that's been made very clear during the first presentation. And also leverage on the technology, because mobile technology is great and can bring a huge difference in how we can deliver the content of primary education. Financing primary education has also been a challenge, but being the continent with all the natural resources, there is surely a way to be able to link the development of these big agricultural projects and the big mining projects with the development and the funding of primary schooling. and the promotion of renewable energy. Now, strategy for the future. We want to keep education at the heart of the battle. We want to keep pressure on the leaders, extend the dialogues in rural community, and spread more information on MDG2 to the entire community, as well as increasing budget allocation for school. Now, modernizing the school curriculum, which we spoke about earlier, improving teachers' training and tools, manufacturing of didactic material, and providing alternative solution for kids who are dropping out of primary school. This is actually the picture of a robot which was made locally by a professor. So there's a lot of things that we can make locally, and we would like to see a focus on agriculture, renewable energy, and technology, and promoting renewable energies. So I have just a few minutes left, so I will go through the latest slides of production of renewable energy. We work with solar system for school. This is a cooking stove that is good for the school cantina, that doesn't use any wood, only the sun, solar concentration. Other solution for water, pumping water, filtering water, as well as solution for larger energy system. This is a biomass system, so it's using agricultural waste to produce the energy for the communities. Now, we started the initiative, the Light of Knowledge, which is actually some very simple devices that are being provided to the school, and this is where we think that marketing can help. The project aims at providing 1 million solar lamps, and as you've seen, we have started the first partnership with Stadler. So actually, our proposition, our value proposition, is that sponsors brand the lamp, which are then provided through the Ministry of Education to the schools and to the teachers to be able to extend the studying hours and provide the opportunity for having some energy at home. This is the pack which has been made for the teachers, which actually would allow them to run a small computer as well as a torch and a desk lamp. We are looking at providing as well some tablets with some contents of literacy. With the shock programs, we have 3 levels of programs. Programs where sponsors can provide 500 lamps, 6,000 lamps, or the highest level of packagings, which is the Kilimanjaro, where we're providing 70,000 lamps in the program. And yes, I think it is a great investment because a lamp that you're providing is good for not only the student, but is good for the entire family. Therefore, the branding that you have on the lamp, the message that you can put on the lamp, which is a positive message, can go to the entire family and the entire community. So, to conclude, some progress has been made in the past 10 years, but the last mile will remain challenging. Agriculture can help, but can also have an adverse effects. Energy is a critical factor for the delivery of all the other services. And the teacher condition and the adult literacy must be improved. Thank you.